Mr. Walker got knocked off the call. We will await his return.
Mr. Tahi and committee members, my call dropped here, but I'm back on the call. And Joe, Ada, thank you for the roll call there. Next item is the invocation. Actually, Honorable Herman Daniels, may I call on you to provide the invocation for today's meeting? Chiche.
Mr. Vice Chair, kudo should say, yeah, kudo, asking kudo, bear within the Niki Dado Nana kudo ben, so get asking kudo e, so the Niki kudo Habate, the kudo Ado Nana kudo, Saint or Niki or La Bear, Singer had not ever let kudo the Benebi kudo, or saying what the deal, the Toya the Nish kudo. Yeah, horse shooting and leaning on, again, horseman has done home. 會轉啊，會轉到啊，會嚟看到誒，唔靠行嚟嘅，到那那看到那看一開看到誒，那那是一人看到，啊到那那看到，做那藝術家看到，啊嗰個那個比本呢本大看呢，當天誒看到一邊，一個那等拉個那個，會嘢嘢那打嚟看到，啊到那那塊做拉塊嘅，你係最呢輪係一隻呢輪看呢。Ado nana kodo e di benebi nana kodo e asana da huil na kodo e asahad begi kodo e kodo e ikinana sunana is neto les kodo ado nana kodo zona ko e kodo e nana sudil nes kodo ado nana kisa hama sodo les kodo kada hosia hon di jahona on fadia dat e da hon benisa hama so ado nana ya te ho kos hona o da edo benisa hama so hona ado nana kodo for a hona ben benil need or let's be benebi hona for the hona benil ne give it baby ben na hona on his cake hona for the card hona sa del either the hard hona go edo hona ba benil need or let's na kabsa hona so hona I could I think Alan Han Panigi hon as for hona ba da the dolls to e hon ran na dai do kato e ne je betla fa de ni kato le hona ado na hona as twido fani hona ba da yao da e shan da ha padan da hona da hu sa go hona ni ke ya ba kai ge hon chen le hon has agi hona sa an kwen da ha pa ado na hon sa in re da ke ha da go hona landing Utah that hol ya Moab Utah hasten that the hol ya hona ado na hona potrada ke shanda da shanda ha hona e don khabsa hona so hona ko big hon ba shanda sin ya fa da hona yan da hona na da yan da sin ya fa da hona e da hona na khaba da ya hona kha non kha de no hona to ba shin dan ni da hona but in that the kahona but hayada hat gade no hona as through funny adona hon as chenda hona go abi that ego hon to abi that ego hona the three agenda hona but that has adan the hona out and has kedo hon but that so by yes hona edon khabada shi hon khabsta hon so hona on hajo ba de in so hona but that so by hona ado nana hon hit the loud hona which banana each hona you da bot many hona za da dika is a nadish in hon ba chen the talk keben na keda bagan has art the hona za da dika lego nana she ken da ka hona on a sad or yard a cut and the horn. Or don't have about the house, we play the horn. Haji your cut in the bit of the hand net the horn and get down the niggy. The horn. Get a don't in horn at he calm the dam, he calm now run the we play safety that the horn and have the horn. I don't get some dash so the horn. Or they catch a horn. Banana should they eat your horn torn and the shame. Sudden dark head and the horn. On the dam, I don't have a sound of some about the she horn. I don't want his last for. Banana should I eat laggy horn, not a craig horn, it had a craggy horn. I don't like horn. He can't drop by in the horn, or one that horn. For 1 yard, a share or less than more than dark horn. Or the inch the horn. But on the door job by in the car horn. I don't have about the house here. The house down on something and I'm saying horn. I don't in the horn. The house in the horn. A corner the way I got a how the season the horn. Was cutting Lenny horn. He got the hardy cut and the horn. Banana should not eat late or less ultra on the way down, but the way head start how this I don't late, but real ultra horn and the way the what the how the ultra I see the real horn universities or colleges. The horn, the cut and the horn. Out of a tidy horn, elementary at the Yostra high school, that's at the Yostra horn. Jono horn of banana, not it or at least they got the high on out horn. They horn and the temperature horns is added each and none at it or less horn. Yet banana, so they do listen to us in the horn. Yet on the kit of Hadi, not some more. Yet that eggy horn, yet the other horn. They bear not the door that he get on. On the young case and Hadi, not some horn. Ultramaya that it or less horn. I don't know horn. By Nistan, the horn and the way down. You carry up a cargo horn, executive branch horns, and another door on the hash. Isn't that the Shigida horn? Now, nation president, vice president, isn't that the Shigi horn? Ada horn Habada, she horn, the Habakita no in. I don't know the legislative branch should die as a horn. Education does, and she gives us for her base for under the horn. But Chinna the Hanover, not this, any that has the horn. But so Kevin, another kid the horn, the Habada, she horn, the Habakita no in horn. I don't that judicial branch horn. So my agent the horn at Miss Joanne Jane horn. Isn't that she don't know that was Argo horn. The way annoyed, but Argo horn courts now with horn. The horn, the Habada, she horn, the Habakita no in horn, the Habasa no so. What I horn. Other than Lingy horn have been easy, NATO let horn and he keep I don't know horn, the hash kindan the horn and fatan the horn. A don't he is a horse on us in which in a look at what on his horns. AIC here horn. As I say, the horse horn, the horn about Torgi law a bit the need the horn. I see horn, he's not the nest thou a horn but a horn. So Torgi is a horse lag, AIC by here needs and ho. I don't know what Lago a talk the car job by needs and horn. Though he asked one to part the horn, so a horn and the horn. The horse say then the other elder horn about Saba, the car job by needs and horn. I don't know that he not lost the horn. The bed or the heart, the horn, out of a cashy, out of Saint the Kelly the horn. The thought that the horn that had the horn and the whole head that the horn. The horn of Navada, she and Navada. Habakita no in horn. Lenny don and ton, Lenny Blanel, and Hardy, not the horn. Oda I want send it to the $10 state Beneby. I don't know horn his staff at the hands of a horn. It or share needs and horn and Habada she horn. On he can't dodge or horn at the way down. So how landed that in niche, it didn't have no a horn, not so fast the net, not so much in niche horn. In Habada she horn. I don't the horn here that it I the had the horn. The horn as on her, which we get at the no in horn. What I to the $10 horn. The house back by the fan and the horn. The house with the hardest land horn. He went for his NATO that she did the machine horn. If you want in harder or street horn. Or that's to the $10, or that's for the given snake or let horn. Or the ask for any John dollar, ask for any John horn. Or the not clean, or the not clean, or the not clean. Or the not clean. Thank you. Vice Chair. Say.
Thank you, Honorable Daniels, for the invocation. Very much appreciated. Not only that, so the Zimmer yo scat echo, acquaintance, the alco, so the Zim did yat Hehilda, so that is not your acquaintance, it is echo. What Elako Nana Ado I see Mr. Tahi announcements. Do you have any announcements for us?
Good morning, Vice Chair Walker. My announcement is today, Budget and Finance Committee is addressing Resource and Development Committee's budget legislation, the budgets that RDC approve over its oversights. Chairman Nez and Delegate Stewart are on that call right now. Tomorrow, NABI will have their regular meeting via telecommunication at 10 a.m. Then on a Friday, Budget and Finance Committee will continue with its budget session. Hopefully, they'll conclude with RDC's approved budget that will be moving forward. Chair members of RDC, that is my announcement. Back to you, Vice Chair Walker.
Thank you, Mr. Tahi, for the announcements. Committee members, do you have any announcements to make? If not, we move down on the agenda here. We have our recognizing guests and visiting officials. So these are, we allow introductions on our agenda here. So let's start with the members of the Resource and Development Committee. Introductions, Honorable Freeland, introductions. Honorable Mark Freeland. You may have to unmute. All right, let's move on. Honorable Key Allen Begay, introductions.
Vice Chair Walker?
Yes.
Key Allen Begay got knocked off the call. We have lost quorum. I'm waiting for him to appear back on Zoom.
I'm on the call.
Okay, should say Honorable Freeland, introductions.
Good morning, Chief. Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. Go ahead, proceed.
Okay, sorry, Chief. I'm on another call with one of my chapters as well, so my apologies. Good morning. Thank you for that prayer. Mark Freeland this year. I represent 8 chapters out of Eastern Agency, Crown Point, don't know how to ski. I have Vicente White Rock, Lake Valley, Herferno, I don't know. Thank you. Check.
Thank you, Honorable Freeland. Honorable Herman Daniels, introductions.
Good morning, Kodo Chief, Vice Chair, Kodo honorable members of Resources and Development Committee. Kodo that his staff. Kodo Kodo Shama Ms. Khan. Kodo Herman Daniels Jr. Kodo and Senegay Batami. Kilachini das Ze. We had Lini Donana Kaitane das Che. Ado Haska Habo, Etasanala ho. Naveda Napas on or Zeto, Slato, other that's Api Kin Epanasness. Thank you, Vice Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Daniel Shate. Honorable Wilson Stewart, introductions. And Chairman Ricky Nez, introductions.
Vice Chair Walker,
Yes.
Chairman Nez is currently still on the Budget and Finance Committee call regarding DNR's budget. Delegate Wilson Stewart is also on that call as well. I'm waiting for Delegate Keelan Begay to join us so we can reestablish quorum. But back to you, Vice Chair Walker.
Okay, thank you for that information. Let me do my introductions. Ayat Sunanta to Nahanda Nishigito to Isonof Agito Kahasin. Yat Thomas Walker Jr. Edison Ado we Tudi Tohoria Ado To Punahali Nana Hasana Tako Hasana what a Ibana Shako Bishmas Natin Tin Benjido Chiki Late Jacheko. The episode of Totunda Nezak Dendoba on is not past the episode that we such a Ishiban Zeko, Toban did Mishikoba Hila. I don't mention Shindo being Tony. Put it in the Bashish chain, Nana Tot something is a Jada. Sadishki Dashinala. The then Shindo, the Resource Development Committee, Vice Chairman, Shinan Jinson Hodges at Echo Kobakian, so it Ado, Hinan Ado, the Nanch at the Hodna teacher, that Ashin Sati Plato, Nan Shanada did Nickname agenda, a whole Jews or Kot Echo. What are that? Yeah, Ishan Ishado. Mr. Tahi, can you go ahead and introduce yourself, committee staff?
Good morning, Vice Chair Walker, members of RDC, guests online. My name is Rodney Tahi. I'm the Legislative Advisor for Resource and Development Committee. I'm Kia'ani and Senjakine, and I'm originally from Steamboat, Arizona. And I want to say thank you, Delegate Daniels, for starting off the morning with that beautiful prayer. It's a great day to start the day. Back to you, Vice Chair Walker.
Thank you, Mr. Tahi. Committee staff, introductions?
Hello, good morning. My name is Karen Chi. I am the legislative reporter for RDC committee. Adon Nainshani Tachi Nation Minishki Bashishi Tabai Dashiche Turin Dashanar. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tahi, Ms. Chi, Ko Kehanana, for assisting the committee here today. Let's see, I know that we have sponsors of legislations on our agenda. Legislations that are on the agenda, we have sponsors. Edo, so at this time, let's ask the members of the 24th Navajo Nation Council to also introduce themselves. Chinanta, based on the introductions. Are there any delegates with us on this call? Introductions?
Vice Chair Walker, your other colleagues that are not on Resource and Development Committee are not on the call at the moment.
Okay, thank you. Office of Legislative Counsel, Ms. Khan, introductions?
Goshina, Yat A Resources and Development Committee members Danoshinigi, Ado, Ahehet and Sago Shiyaj, Najonago, Sorazin Ben Hitch and Hainsey, A Ba Ahe Ille. Thank you very much. J. Mariana Khan, Dashajine, Dona and Shinigi, A Toyhead Lini Nishan, Ahi Bashish Chin, Ashche Dashache, Tenjikina Dashanala. Ado Ahehet and Hiso Kaigo da Isin. Thank you for coming to participate in today's meeting, those who are present for presentations and reports and legislation. Ado Ahehet Ada. Those who are participating and for your patience. Mr. Vice Chair, I am back to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Khan. for the introductions. Although Office of the Speaker, we have staff that are on the call with us. Introductions.
Good morning, Vice Chair Walker and honorable members of the Resource and Development Committee. My name is Joaquin Yates. I'm the legal assistant for the Office of the Speaker. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Mr. Yates, for the introductions, and welcome aboard. Welcome to the legislative work that we do. We appreciate support from the offices that we work with within the legislative branch. Again, welcome. On Office of the President, Vice President, any representatives that are on the call with us? Introductions.
Good morning, good after morning. Yanteo Shina, Mr. Vice Chair and members of Resource and Development Committee. Anotso Besh Bahasa and then Lindigi Adon Handa Nishigi staff Yante and those that are listening, and Davis Silver from Office of the President, Vice President, Executive Staff Assistant. I'll be listening in today. Do do share which you Katodin Zenigi. Bahe do do. I don't had it all yet. Echo a bed old none. So do little.
Thank you for the introductions from OPVP. Any other OPVP representatives? Introductions? Moving along, divisions, departments, programs, staff, representatives, anyone that want to introduce themselves. The presenters for today on our agenda today is the WSR Insurance. The representatives, introductions.
Yate, honorable members of Resource and Development Committee. She'e Brigade and Chia, Twitani Nishle, Hosea Shihe Bashishchin, Ashihe Dashache, Ashtie Dashanele. I'm an agent with WSR Insurance. I also have owner Matt Griffith on the line, as well as another agent, Dugan Kelly. Thank you for having us today.
Okay, can you have your associates also introduce themselves? Okay.
Honorable members of the Resource and Development Committee and the Navajo Nation, I am Matt Griffith, one of the owners of WSR Insurance. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Griffith. Any other representatives there?
Honorable Vice Chair Walker, this is Dugan Kelly with WSR Insurance, and I am an agent. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Moving along to the Nephew Sovereignty Alliance organization. Lori Begay, introductions, yourself and your associates as well.
Thank you. Honorable members of the Resource and Development Committee. Yes, my name is Gloria Ambigay. Twitchini A and Shlin Touchini A Bashishchin, Isaslana Ada Shiche, Ado, Tobonha Ada Shanella. And I am originally from Inscription House, Arizona, and currently working as a retired educator and policy developer. So we thank you for allowing us to present our report to the committee today. And I have two associates, Roberto Lewis, and then also Chip Brown. So they'll introduce themselves. Thank you.
I'm gonna go ahead and
Yes, proceed,
introduce myself. Good morning to everybody. I don't cannot only don't citizen she Roberto not Lewis in share. Todachi in the inchly Totsoni Bashichin, my dish gish Nidashi, Todak Unjetational, Quado, Zilichin, Barande, Bake about Hotson Holiday in a Sina shadow, a hair, teaching a house, she getting the hill net door lesto. To a hair none.
Thank you, Mr. Nat Lewis. Mr. Brown?
Thank you very much, Vice Chair, Delegate Walker, and honorable members of the Resource and Development Committee and other guests. I am Chip Brown. I am a retired attorney and now a farmer living in the Baca Pruitt area. I work with Gloria Begay in the Dene Food Sovereignty Alliance, and it's an honor to be here with you today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brown, for the introductions. Introductions. Any other officials, visiting guests that want to introduce themselves? And on 24th Navajo Nation Council, any delegates that are on the call now? Introductions. At Danoshe, we will proceed to the next item, which is reviewing and approving the agenda. Item 3 on our agenda. Mr. Tahi, can you give us a reading and a review?
Chair, members of RDC, Delegate Wilson Stewart just joined the call, so we have reestablished quorum. Just for your record, Vice Chair Walker.
Okay, thank you. She get Honorable Stewart, introductions. You have to unmute.
Okay, yeah, I'm here. What did you ask? I'm sorry.
Introductions. Can you introduce yourself?
Okay. Joker. Jay Wilson C. Stewart Jr. and Giato quit Sony and Schle. Knowledge as Kachin Ebash's chain, Kachin the State up between the Chanel. Auto Aquadotel, so that question this morning. Research Development Committee members. Excuse my tardiness. I was outside on and also on the BFC call as well. So, but I do represent Fort Defiance, Sawmill, Red Lake Crystal, and the Fort Defiance Agency of the Resource Development Committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Stewart. Back to you, Mr. Tahi, for the reviewing the agenda.
Vice Chair Walker, members of the Resource and Development Committee, you have your proposed agenda. Resource and Development Committee of the 24th Navajo Nation Council, regular meeting, Wednesday, August 10th, 2022, 10 a.m. Presiding, Honorable Ricky Nez, Chairperson. Honorable Thomas Walker Jr., Vice Chairperson. Location via telecommunication. 1. Call the meeting to order. Roll call, invocation, announcements. 2. Recognizing guests and visiting officials. 3. Reviewing and approving the agenda. 4. Reviewing and approving the journal. August 3rd, 2022, regular meeting. 5. Receiving reports. A. Report by WSR Insurance on agriculture/drought insurance coverage offered for the Navajo Nation. Presenters Brittany Begay, Sales, Doug Dugan, Sales, and Matthew Griffin, Owner, WSR Insurance. B. Report by the Nephew Food Sovereignty Alliance on proposed food policy for the Navajo Nation. Presenter Gloria Begay. 6. Old business, none. 7. New business, legislation number 0115-22. An act relating to the Resource and Development and Budget and Finance Committees approving a change to CAP-35-18 for the Indian Wells chapter by moving funds for the Senior Center facility repairs in the amount of $265,000 from the Fund Year 1 to Year 3. Sponsor Honorable Elmer P. Begay. B. Legislation number 0149-22. An action relating to the Resource and Development, Health, Education, and Human Services, Law and Order and Navigate Committee, opposing states decriminalization of the use of peyote, sponsor Honorable Eugene Charles Newton. C, approving an in-person Resource and Development Committee regular meeting at Cameron Chapter in Cameron, Arizona for Wednesday, August 24th, 2022 at 9 a.m., followed by a site tour of the vendors of the Cameron Little Colorado River to discuss their concerns and issues as it relates to Navajo Nation Parks and Recreation. 8, close of meeting announcements and adjournment. Vice Chair Walker, members of RDC, that is the proposed agenda run into the record. Back to you, Vice Chair Walker.
Thank you for the reading and the review, Mr. Tahi. Committee members, we need to establish a motion to discuss, if need be, discuss the agenda. Is there a motion?
Motion, Daniel?
Okay, thank you, Honorable Daniels.
Second,
Is
Freeland.
there a second? Thank you, Honorable Freeland. So we have a motion made by Honorable Herman Daniels, a second offered by Honorable Mark Freeland. Ella, questions or are there any amendments? Chinanta?
Vice Chair Walker?
Yes.
Vice Chair Walker, the Department of Justice Water Rights Unit reached out to me, and I email all members of RDC regarding an in-person leadership meeting to discuss the Hopi and San Basin Rio proposals that they want to discuss with leadership and receive directions. The meeting has been tentatively scheduled for Friday, August 19th, 2022. If we can add that to the agenda for approval, that would be great. Back to you, Vice Chair Walker.
Thank you, Mr. Tahi. Members of the committee, also is an amendment, committee members? There's a request from Navajo Nation's DOJ's Water Rights Unit, ADA, request to meet ADA also agenda. Okay, so that'd be your amendment, yeah. Okay, amendment number 1. Okay, is there a second to that amendment?
Stewart.
Honorable Stewart. So motion's been made by Honorable Mark Freeland, and then seconded by Honorable Wilson Stewart. So that would be amendment number 1, which is to consider and approve a meeting at the request of Navajo Nation's DOJ's Water Rights Unit. That would be the item D under new business. Any questions, comments? If not, call for the vote. All in favor? Mark Freeland, how do you vote?
I vote green.
Voting green. Honorable Freeland. T. Allen Begay, how do you vote? T. Allen Begay, how do you vote?
T. Allen votes green.
Okay, thank you. Honorable Herman Daniels, how do you vote?
I vote green.
Okay, thank you. Honorable Wilson Stewart, how do you vote?
Green.
Green, okay, and then Chairman Ricky Nez is excused. Then Vice Chairman doesn't vote. We have a vote of 4 in favor and none opposed. Motion carries on amendment number 1. Any other amendments, committee members? yeah, we can go back to the main motion in approving our agenda here. So I'm going to call for the vote on the main motion. Honorable Mark Freeland, how do you vote?
Green.
Green, thank you. Honorable Kealan Begay, how do you vote?
Kealan votes green.
Thank you for that vote, Honorable Begay. Honorable Herman Daniels, how do you vote?
Vote green.
Green, okay, thank you, Honorable Daniels. Honorable Wilson Stewart, how do you vote?
Green.
Green. Okay, then Chairman Nez is excused from the meeting today. Although as the Vice Chairman, I do not have a vote here today as I am presiding. We have a vote of 4 in favor and none opposed. We have adopted our agenda. Number 4 on our agenda, reviewing and approving the journal, Mr. Tahi.
Vice Chair Walker is member of the Resource and Development Committee. The journal was emailed out this morning by Ms. Karen Chi. It was emailed at 8:34 a.m.
Okay.
Back to you, Vice
Thank
Chair
you.
Walker.
Committee member. Okay, thank you, Mr. Tahi. Committee members, there a motion to approve journals for August 3rd, 2022?
Motion, Daniel. I'll motion, Che. I'll second Freeland.
Okay, motion made by Honorable Herman Daniels, seconded by Honorable Mark Freeland. Are there any questions in approving the journal? If not, then I will call for the vote. Honorable Mark Freeland, how do you vote?
I vote green.
Green, okay, thank you for that. Honorable Kealan Begay, how do you vote? Honorable Kealan Begay, how do you vote? Okay, moving on, Honorable Herman Daniels, how do you vote?
I vote green.
Okay, green, a vote of green, thank you. Honorable Wilson Stewart, how do you vote?
Green.
Green vote, thank you. Chairman Nez is excused, although as Vice Chair, I am not voting. I have a vote of 3 in favor, 0 opposed. Let me go back. Honorable Kealan Begay, be on the call.
Vice Chair Walker, this is Delegate McKay. I'm just calling in for let you know that I'm on the line too.
Okay. Welcome, Honorable Elmer Begay. So, Key Ellen Begay. Tahi, is Honorable Begay on the call?
Vice Chair Walker, Delegate Kealan Begay is on the call. I do see him unmuted, but I will send him a text message to let him know that he is being asked for his vote.
Okay, he can text in his vote.
Delegate Kealan, green, thank you.
Okay. We have a vote of green from Honorable Kealan Begay. The vote is now at 4 in favor and 0 opposed. We have reports. item 5 here, receiving reports. A, Gwenda, report by WSR Insurance on agriculture drought insurance coverage offered by the Navajo Nation, for the Navajo Nation. Presenters are Brittany Begay, Dugan Kelly, Matthew Griffin. Begay, you have the floor.
Yat she Brittany Begay and Shia Totally Nishle, Hosea Shia Bushishchin, Ashia Dashache, Lashia Dashanale, Sabadelkai, Arizona Dantanasha. I'm an agent with WSR Insurance. Today we will be presenting our PRF proposal to the Navajo Nation. The policy that we are presenting is the same policy we presented last year in 2021, and we have included our current results from 2022. I will be joined by an owner of WSR, Matt Griffith, as well as Dugan Kelly, another agent in the company. I sent out a PowerPoint presentation to Mr. Tahi, and we will be beginning on slide 5. If you have any questions.
Ms. Begay?
Yes.
Begay, sorry for this, but 20 minutes for the reports.
Okay.
For committee rule. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. If you have any questions at any time during the presentation, please don't hesitate to ask us. Matt will be giving us a brief history on WSR and an introduction to WSR.
Honorable members of the Resource and Development Committee and members of the Navajo Nation, on behalf of WSR Insurance, I'd like to express how much we appreciate the opportunity to meet with you today. The first slide in our presentation goes over WSR's history. And WSR Insurance is a combination of 3 agencies. The oldest was founded in 1917. We are primarily focused in the ag community, and we specialize with products that provide risk management options for operations that are looking to protect their assets. We are very proud to be the exclusive insurance agency for organizations such as the California Cattlemen's, Nevada Cattlemen's, Western Video Market, and the Public Lands Council. If we could go to the next slide, it will show some of the highlights of our crop insurance division. WSR writes policies covering 28 different agricultural commodities. Today, we are focusing on our pasture, rangeland, and forage product, or PRF as it is commonly known. PRF is designed to protect ranches during dry weather. WSR has been writing these policies since 2012. Currently, we have 35 agents that work with customers all across the country. As of 2022, our PRF policy count as an agency stands at 1,572 policies. We pride ourselves on customer service and believe that has been the key to our growth. Last year, we grew 30% as an agency, bringing our PRF book of business to over $90 million. Brittany Begay in particular grew over 200% in her book and would be the agent leading WSR on your policy. Commissions are split 50-50 between WSR and our agents. We greatly appreciate the opportunity to present our philosophy on PRF today, and our goal is to provide an insurance policy that reduces premium while maximizing the benefits available to the Navajo Nation. Brittany will get us started on slide 7 that explains WSR's approach to accomplishing our PRF objectives. Thank you.
Okay, on slide 7, here are a few bullet points on WSR's main objectives with our clients in the PRF program. First, we always sit down with our customers and explain the program. We listen to their goals and concerns, and we create a plan for them. We strive to create a safe, comprehensive, and sustainable policy to build long-standing relationships with our clients. Once a client signs up for the program, beginning the next year at the end of February, we send them reports on what precipitation was collected by NOAA. These reports are sent out at the end of every month after February. We also monitor the data in these reports to ensure that it's correct and accurate. We also work with our underwriters to complete audits, and we submit all of your documents and make sure that you receive your lost payments as soon as they are available. Okay, on slide 8, Dugan is going to go over a few facts about the PRF program.
Okay, Resource and Development Committee, is there a way to get our presentation on the screen?
Mr. Tiny?
Vice Chair Walker, yes, I've granted access to Brittany Begay, Dugan Kelly, and Matthew Griffin to do a share screen so they can share their screen on Zoom.
Okay, thank you.
Back
Okay,
to presenters.
thank you. So the PRF, with PRF, you don't have to enroll all your acres. It is a year-to-year contract, which gives you the ability to change coverage levels, coverage, and the number of acres from year to year. You don't have to measure any rainfall. NOAA weather stations are used to collect the rainfall amounts, and it takes an estimated 70 days from the end of an interval from the claim to be processed and to be released to payout. The policy begins January 1st, 2023, and would end December 31st, 2023. Applications must be signed and turned in before December 1st, 2022 for the 2023 year. Brittany's going to take over slide 9.
Okay, on slide 9, here are a few of the clients that we are currently working with on trust land. Their contact information is attached, and you are welcome to reach out to them if you'd like.
Okay, how is the rainfall measured? So there are 9,000 NOAA weather stations across the United States. They use at least 4 of the closest gauges to the center of your grid, and they use a mathematical equation to average the total, and they have collected rainfall data this way since 1948 to create an average rainfall for each interval for each grid. We'll go on to slide 11. So this is a picture of the grids. The grids do not follow state, county, or other geographical boundaries. Each grid is approximately 12 by 12 mile area, and each grid has its own average rainfall amount for each interval.
This is an image on slide 12 that shows all 125 contiguous grids that the Navajo Nation can insure on its policy. We looked at the data for each grid, and we selected the best grids that have historically paid the most in indemnities. On slide 13, I'm going to talk a little bit more about the subsidy. This program is subsidized by the USDA, which means they pay a portion of your premium. The program was created by the USDA to keep the beef market at an even, steady pace. And depending on which coverage level you select, it will determine the amount of subsidy you receive. At 85% coverage level, you will receive 55% of subsidy for the total premium. At 90% coverage level, the subsidy pays 51% of the total premium. For example, on the next slide, 14, here is a graph on how much subsidy you would receive if you kept your premium at 16.1 million. At 85%, which is our recommended coverage level, you would receive $19.6 million in subsidy. At 90% coverage level, you would only receive $16.9 million in subsidy. That is a $2.7 million difference in subsidy. And we have found that at 85% coverage, you can take the most advantage of the subsidy.
Okay, on this slide, we show 2 graphs. The top graph represents approximately the amount of coverage you currently have in each interval. If we look under current policy on the top line, it will show each of the intervals that you would be allowed to insure the average rainfall in. So starting from the left, January, February, then February, March, then March, April, including all the intervals all the way until you get to the other far side of the slide where it's November, December. So the next line down underneath the intervals is a percent. That represents the percent of your total acres in your policy that is insured under that interval. So January and February has 14.1% of your total policy in January, February. So you can look under each interval and see how much coverage you have under each interval. The next line down has a dollar amount. This amount represents the dollar amount of coverage you have in each interval. So directly under the interval, you can see how much coverage dollar amount you have covered for each interval. So if we look under April, May, you can see where you have $304,000 worth of coverage. And in May, June, you have $29 million worth of coverage. This shows how you have two back-to-back intervals that have a lot of coverage in one and not a whole lot of coverage in the other. So as I look across the whole year, I can see where you have no coverage in some intervals, a little in some intervals, and a lot in other intervals. So if we look down to the second graph below where it says WSR coverage, this would be how we would recommend how to have your coverage in every interval throughout the year. This approach would have close to $9 million worth of coverage in every interval throughout the whole year. So at any point in the year, if there's a 60-day period that is below your average rainfall, you'll have coverage in there. So with this approach, we're not trying to outguess Mother Nature in the future. We just benefit when it's below its average compared to normal. So let's go on to page or slide 16. So this is a bar graph representing the amount of acres that are insured under each interval. The blue bar represents how WSR would recommend having coverage in every interval throughout the whole year. The number on the graph represents the percentage of your total acres insured. The orange bar represents an estimate of your total acres you currently have covered in each interval. You can see there is no orange bars in some intervals, very little orange bars in others, and a lot of orange bars in May, June, and October, November. So if we go on to slide 17, this is the 22 report. This is the results for 2022 for the policy we presented to the Navajo Nation last year, which is 10 million acres, 28,188 acres at the 85% coverage level and having coverage in every interval and using the grids that we chose. So if we look at the graph, the top line has the intervals starting with January, February, and underneath January, February, there's the dollar amount that would have been paid out this year if we had signed the policy. So January and February paid $4.8 million. February and March paid $3.1 million. March, April would have paid $3.7 million. April, May would have paid $9.1 million. And May, June would have paid $738,000. So as I look at that, it tells me that May, June had the most rainfall compared to average, and April, May was the driest compared to normal. So if we can go back to slide 16, it shows that April, May, you don't have a whole lot of coverage in there, and it was the driest interval this year. And May, June was the wettest interval, and you had most of your ground in there, and so it didn't benefit from that. So for this year, it was dry in April, May. And it didn't benefit from it as much as you would have if you would have had more coverage in there. So historically, it's been dry at some point in the year compared to normal. Having coverage throughout the whole year, you don't have to guess when that's going to be. You just benefit when it is. This is an example of why we recommend being more conservative with your coverage and less gambling with your coverage. And then I'll turn it over to Brittany.
Okay, on slide 18, based on the way we would have set up your policy, this is a 15-year bar graph on how it would have paid out in the last 15 years. This is after the premium has been paid. As you can see, this policy would not have lost once in the past 15 years. On slide 19, here's a bar graph comparison between your current policy and WSR's policy. This is the estimated net indemnities from the past 5 years that you have been in the program. Looking at this graph, you can see that WSR's policy has consistently paid net indemnities for the past 5 years, compared to your current policy in which you had to pay $6.9 million in 2019. On this slide, this is a summary of the last 5 years that you've been in the program. The estimated net benefits your current policy made is approximately $87 million. With WSR, you would have made estimated $129 million, which is a difference of $41 million. And in 2021, your annual premium was $16.2 million with your current policy. And with WSR, your premium would have been $11.6 million, which is a difference in $4.6 million. A summary of the 2022 results for this year up to the end of July. Your premium amount would have been $11.6 million, and your year-to-date total losses would be $21 million. And your net indemnity after the premium was paid would be $10 million, and you would still have 45% of your coverage left for a total of $45 million. Here are a few underwriters that we currently work with, Great American, RCIS, NAU, and Hudson. And here are some important deadline dates for the PRF program. The sales closing date is December 1st of this year, and the start of the insurance would be on January 1st of next year and end on December 31st of 2023. A summary of our proposal is that our premium would cost $11.6 million. Your total out-of-pocket cost for the past 15 years would be $0. And your average net for the past 15 years would be approximately $21 million. And the total net for the past 15 years would be $314 million. Here is a link to our website, and we'll now open up to any questions.
Okay, thank you for the report. WSR Insurance. Yeah, presenters, we thank you for coming to the committee this morning with the information and the oral presentation. Committee members, motion to accept the report. Need to establish that motion before we proceed to questions and comments. Committee members? Nanda. Is there a motion to accept the report? Thank you, Honorable Daniels. Committee members, is there a second? Nanda, second. You may have to unmute. We have a motion made by Honorable Herman Daniels to accept the report. Is there a second? Committee members?
Stewart.
Okay, thank you, Honorable Stewart. Thank you for that. Are there questions and comments to the committee on the report? Questions and comments? Going once? Two times? Last call? Questions and comments? Ata no shin e ya shoko pe des na do ta ye ke ni ya ishin kwege bend di ja shinanta. So how do you vote, Honorable Mark Freeland? We're voting to accept the report, Honorable Freeland. Honorable Key Allen Begay, how do you vote? Key Allen Begay, how do you vote? At what time as a nation or? Herman Daniels, Honorable Herman Daniels, how do you vote?
We vote green.
Okay, voting green. Honorable Wilson Stewart, how do you vote?
Green.
Vote of green. Thank you, Honorable Stewart. I know Chairman Ned, he's excused from our meeting. And Key Allen Begay texting his vote, which is green. I got back up the line. Honorable Mark Freeland, how do you vote? Okay, so we have
I vote
a vote
green.
of 3 in favor.
I vote green. Chairman K, green.
Okay. Honorable Mark Freeland votes green. So we have a vote of 4 in favor, unopposing, although Vice Chair not voting. Thank you. Presenters, thank you for the report. Although moving on to the next item, report by the Nephew Sovereignty Alliance on proposed food policies for the Navajo Nation. The lead presenter will be Ms. Gloria Begay. Mr. Nut Lewis, Mr. Brown. Hey, Laco. Mr. Begay, you have 20 minutes for the report, you and your associates.
Good morning again. And thank you, committee, for listening to our report. And I am share screening our PowerPoint presentation. So can folks see this PowerPoint?
Mr. Tahi?
Yes, Gloria, we can see the PowerPoint presentation on the screen.
Okay, well, thank you again, committee members. And today we want to present a project that's important to all of us because we all know about the issues of the current food crisis, I believe is happening because of the high cost of food that has gone up, and even gasoline and transportation costs have gone up. And so my organization has been working on researching and developing some possible potential food policies around food and agriculture. And I first want to thank Delegate Walker for giving us some guidance as to these policies in some meetings in the past few months. And then also thank Mariana Khan for joining us because she was in our deliberations with the Navajo junk food tax that I was a core member of the passage of that important tax initiative. And then my home delegate, Herman Daniels. Glad to hear you on the line today, and thank you for that wonderful prayer. I'm a retired school teacher and have been doing some work in the area of research and policy development centered around our Navajo food and agriculture issue. DFSA is a grassroots, community-led nonprofit organization. And I guess I need to send this to the slide feature. I'm not too good with this technology. Let's see, I'm hoping I can. Okay, and so anyway, we are organized to help restore the traditional Navajo foods locally, and also relook at our food system on the Navajo Nation with many different partners. And we all know that food and agriculture is really a large part of our culture. And so it's can become very complex and very involved in terms of developing maybe some solutions that can help increase food production locally and also stop the food insecurity that is happening on the Navajo Nation. We are funded by the Native American Food Fund organization, and our objectives in this particular grant is first to establish some local Diné food and agriculture policy councils. And this is very well accepted by our different chapters that we have been presenting our support resolutions. They like that idea because our communities are so very different. And we have also attached and sent to Mr. Tahi some attached documents of background research papers and studies and how-to documents. And we've also researched the Navajo Nation codes reflecting our topics, and also the University of Arkansas's tribal food and agriculture model policies. And that document is almost 900 pages. So that was a very large document, and thank Chip Brown for helping us sort those policy languages that we might use for our proposed policies. And that brings us to our objective number 2. We're to develop some food and agriculture policy recommendations. And of course, it's based on all of the research and data we've collected. Many meetings, we had 48 chapter meetings this past year, and agency council meetings. And I've been out meeting with farmers and ranchers at grazing committee meetings and farm boards in the past month. And the third objective is to advocate to you colleagues, you honorable council delegates, on our proposed food and agriculture policies. And we are wanting to propose 5 policies in the area of food and safety certification, so our farmers can go out and market their local produce. We're looking at, of course, the local food policy councils, farm to school policies, and then addressing amendments maybe to some of our water and land issues that seem very concerning by our Navajo farmers and ranchers. We have obtained 40 chapter resolutions, and we've noted and documented all the concerns and recommendations by Navajo citizens and farmers and ranchers in this past year. This is a particular image that I use when I go out to train about the issues of food and agriculture. And the concept of this particular image is that everything is connected, and we are the Holy Earth Surface people, and that's in our fundamental laws, that we have a sacred obligation and duty to respect and preserve and protect our Mother Earth and Father Sky. And we have the sacred gifts of language and thinking. And so we are charged with that work here as the people. And I'm going to go ahead and turn over the presentation to Roberto Nutt Lewis, who is also a farmer and a community advocate. And he will give some rationale and information about how the Diné fundamental laws support our 5 current proposed food and agriculture policies. So I'll turn the time over to Roberto. Thank you.
Yat eto ke nana ali da isinos ido alon hinat ani no klinigi. My role here is to try to root this work, explain it from the net perspective that the neck actually hannet do not can lead it between the hasia. Ebe in the nil in the food policy hat niki show other benach shekit au had the nil kaya bakad or that so betnans lagi. Asian bahashnet do next slide, Gloria. Koho generate na ke na hannet don sana case go di chiyan bidi nenan set ado chiyan khas alkhanas china do ya ini jin le koho o yuja o na kin bilsilla ado hannet do belnazilla akut ein de chukon ade colonization bidi ni do tahot aun kel nikel ho le ado o yuja behas ani yanki kina az unle koho benach ayin zil ado do ya shona di adenek achi inna I seen the door yashigi nan anle ibn ye ekon nakhani zanle kwado nikik eda dot kin to sa to ashkil dil nesh khala I seen ye go and the host in leti nikhe all in likin antinan or ba dadi khat ado ankis ishit and which end up with in the food related disease what ya koda what be nikhe in the den in the ado kon kay and lenende that nest zanle a cohort adenjon kon nada hashkin hashin so gashing Digin the nanny hardros bound gets so in these and the conic not a hastrano con non set not the son the con coyat in let in the conet negent nas coyat el con nickel half the door neatly hidden adonic kay and the dollars of cut out at ages what away but color needs and a core even your quite needs and again in our proposed food policy we value the cultural and spiritual significance of our lifeways. And we seek to bring these traditional practices to the forefront of community development strategies for our people. Next slide, Gloria. The fundamental laws, but the proposed policy rooted in the neck etcher. In there, in the fundamental law, it does recognize that we as the have always been guided and protected by the immutable laws provided by the and these laws have not only provided sanctuary for the Ne life way, but has guided, sustained, and protected the Nip as they journeyed upon and off the sacred lands. Akodishi, they would end the nature shake it out, Nasta Nadi, Kacho, it would out its so cosnle. Ado di quanash and the cosmology of the net or huge and a lot of our food systems, the values and principles are embedded in our narrative. Lady is not koja haina, Ado kodo ek ilie to 8 kaji koji in lacho no na hanne, Ado gan askidi in nane di tlau ejo ebenache enata. Not ordinary is not on Linigi without in the Hananaria. But we only have 20 minutes for this presentation. We're not going to dive into a lot of these, but these are things that we want to continue to explore. Our main presentation revolves around what was developed by our late Dr. Herbert Benali. Can you put the presentation or go to slide back? Go back. In his model, as he worked on his PhD, the next slide back to the cosmology. It shows dawn, blue twilight, yellow twilight, and darkness. The 4 pillars of knowledge, he explains that in his work, and we utilize that, and he worked with us to kind of root this work in that way of thinking. These are the natural process that have guided our people. Go ahead, next slide, Gloria. Jo ade hanna o ya di the nani tlinigi jo ein hinne benachin si case solil adon ka gal nikets is jo be ik in di dadot an hi hashin sago be dohdil higi jo be ina il idolil ado ke sto nikik hollo nikit na hollo na khalchine da hallo आज दो नहीं ता खाए की तो ओ यूज पांसा के sto dinilsen ado kunne di no san bidi ninigi bakai nakaho anle di silnas nilago bigije jo en khagan bidi ne ko au bigije ne khit eliala jo be te dil ne jo au digin de ne hatan khit la bala ashla no kha digin de ne khit no no, we are loved. I think we have to really understand that we are loved people. So from that position of power, from that position of a deeper awareness of ourselves, I think is really important as we move forward. Next slide, please. cho nan tin oho le be in lingi be nal sto jo ben sa ha ke so khwa gi ha jo ti chian bi di ningi no non sen le nal closion le ke at arts ko chi ingi ha jo ban sen di ko hit be ne na da ina do le. So having the right mindset and what is culturally appropriate to us as the Net people is really important. And some of the proposed policy looks at working with our school institutions. Although ik in die tandle ado ishing be lata do nitigi chwar jo kwa nishnanasla kwa be do legi jo in kits is kwa be eat inle. We call it regenerative economy, non-nish. Did all huge non-nish go at be non-nish has the knowledge to restore our food system and to restore our ecology that feeds into our food system. Although when a HOA not so joy quiet now for Nigi a quaggy hajot and Linigi be hajotini in Donikin hidden and Linigi ebinachi be hidden deal nish jo quag nana store. Although when a HOA charge case nana bigich HOA hotels in Harlot or a Hashin so ha yin although Hashin so a Nazi in although had called different ceremonies that take place. Looking at our ecology, making sure that we have a sound, safe, and regenerative ecosystem that can sustain our people for generations to come. Next slide. This next slide goes deeper into the narrative that I said about the corn, bean, squash, and tobacco. Although it's east be hatzil, although kunna and linigi be eda husband or quaggy be cotton jitja hilna nishinle, although kunna the spiritual wellness hajo be nijit si wings in the legi, although not see in linigi in the yat e honana be hanada hidologish. Jo question a be da inan ya dahasia. And this is some of the narrative that we learn from our traditional practitioners. So just wanted to briefly mention that these are some of the values that we carry with our food system. Next. So with all of that, how do we root this in policies? And we're looking at the fundamental laws. And it's the duty of the leadership, the nation's leadership, to preserve and protect and enhance our lifeways, the lifeways. And it's also important that we incorporate some of these lifeways into policy codes. Although not that these laws provide the foundation for the in leadership through developing and administering policies and plans utilizing these laws as guiding principles. So we want to reaffirm that with our leaders and work with you guys in that way. Next slide. So here we're looking at the, you skipped one, go back to 11. Rooting the 4 pillars of the knowledge into the traditional laws. Here, the next, so Digo has all within the fundamental laws. You have the traditional laws, the common law, customary law, and the natural law. And looking at those, we took out some of the language. So under the traditional laws, and here it talks about the values and principles that we always respect. The people, the medicine people, the elders, and there's a lot of opportunities to create policies for our schools and learning spaces in the community. It is the freedom and the rights of the people that our children are provided with education to absorb wisdom, self-knowledge, and knowledge to empower them to make a living. And we need the educational system as well to support these initiatives. And I think the policy is really important to create those social conditions and to guide our institution in that way. In the traditional laws, and as mentioned, we have done a lot of these community engagement and talking circles with our communities over the years. Next slide. We kind of associate that with the common law, because the common law talks about as a values and principles to guide our people and our leaders in order to cope with the complexities of the changing world, the need to compete in business to make a living. It also must be used to harness and utilize the unlimited interwoven knowledge. The food restoration, the Ninigi Edo Belagana, the need that unhid and then need Linigin here or in citizens, but beat Nas Lana, a Jo had the Nito Jo indeed need. There's a lot of creative grassroots initiative happening. So the ability to organize and weave in traditional knowledge with modern knowledge. So here we're showing an image of these young people using modern technology, GPS, to map the food systems, creating strategic ways to restore food system. And overall, I think, as I mentioned, we're looking at regenerative economy, food systems, localized food systems that can really provide economic opportunity on the ground. So I think there's, again, a lot of opportunities to create those social conditions so that we can have localized food economies. Next slide. We associate that with the customary law. Again, it's the right of our people that the sacred S system based upon the 4 original clans are preserved and taught. So when we look at food system, every clan has their own food systems within their respective home common land use areas. To have a holistic education. And all in all, we're really looking at a base approach, not necessarily the individual, the permitting system, but as a community approach. Although, again, overall, I think it also talks about self-governance. And I think the civil societies, the NGOs, play an important role as the FSA is doing here. People or young people are already organized into cooperatives and businesses and community-owned businesses. So there's very different models and ways to organize collectively rather than just individuals. So that we're looking at a collective engagement, not just individual. Next. Hosan Humapaka to a quite yandi quite non-set and lidak epanahas ando tohadas lido beikita our food infrastructures on the landscape. So again, we want to make sure that we maintain the sacredness of this, and it's expressed again in the fundamental laws. And it's really important that we establish a proper awareness of our ecological and food system based on our traditional knowledge of how we interact with our landscape. We can't replicate as I mentioned, the US food system, especially now with climate change. Things are going in directions that we have never been in before as humanity, scientists, and we also have to prepare as the Net people ourselves. So there's a lot of work to restore our watersheds as well as we talk about our food system. So
Mr. Nutley, other presenters, I apologize for interrupting here. The 20 minutes that was allotted for the report is up. However, committee members, there are no objections to allowing some additional time to the presenters. We can do that. Ms. Begay, how many minutes do you think you could use or need? 5 minutes, 10 minutes?
I believe, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, yes, I believe we could probably complete this presentation in 5 to 10 minutes.
Okay. Committee members, are there any objections to allowing additional time? The presenter.
Vice Chairman.
Yes.
This is Otto So.
Yes.
I just want to say that I'm on the line for the record. Sorry for.
Okay.
Thank you. I'm on the line.
Welcome to Resource Development Committee meetings. Yeah. So there's no, yes.
Delegate Freeland.
Sorry, Honorable Freeland.
Additional time.
Okay. Okay. Mr. Gay and Mr. Not Lewis, Mr. Brown, you have some additional time to continue the presenting the information for the committee. So proceed.
Yeah, it's not on it. So what I just mentioned and talked about again was under the 4 pillars of the knowledge and case that it's Gloria, can you bring it back to where it was at? Slide 15. Thank you. That's our thinking process, and we're not completed yet. Food Policy Council and we have some recommendation that Gloria will proceed to explain. And we really look forward to it actually being realized. I'll go ahead and hand it back to Gloria.
Thank you, Roberto. And I just appreciate the research that Roberto has been doing to align our DNF fundamental laws to our policy work, because it's so important to look at the current tribal codes that many tribes don't have. And so I think Navajo Nation is fortunate to have their fundamental laws, which is guiding a lot of our work as policies for the Navajo Nation. This next slide is just a reminder of all the different reasons why we are also looking at the current food crisis in our society and also across the United States. And as we all know, we are a food desert. We have limited access to affordable and nutritious food. And some of our families are traveling 100 miles one way to buy food. And with the high cost of food and gas, this is becoming even more difficult. In the second column, we know that Navajo Nation imports 98 to 99% of the food. We only have 13 supermarkets that can provide a variety of nutritious food. And then, of course, our convenience stores are selling unhealthy junk food. And so Navajos don't even have a choice sometimes to buy affordable, nutritious food. And then looking at our water situation that farmers are very concerned about, we are lacking a lot of access to portable and safe drinking water for home use and also agriculture. Our farm boards and grazing committee members are really concerned for the lack of the water and climate change. And then the last column, you all know the health disparities that are tied to healthy, nutritious food. We have high rates of obesity, type 2 diabetes, and cancer. And so we are very concerned about, these health disparities. And we just completed a food summit with Delegate Walker and President Nez the end of April. And there were many concerns that were voiced in our breakout sessions. And so I even voiced that we could have maybe combated COVID-19 more better if our healthy bodies were better equipped with better immune systems. And so all of these are tied together in terms of the healthiness of our Navajo Nation being better workers and better learners in our Navajo Nation. The next slide is the 5 proposed policies that we're looking at. And it was very difficult to choose which kinds of policies should we address because there are so many out there. And the Navajo Nation does have some policies that are currently in our systems. However, we wanted to propose maybe some extra policies that could really enhance and help our Navajo farmers and ranchers and citizens with the issue of our food crisis. The first one is looking at food safety, and in our research and a lot of studies, if our Navajo farmers and ranchers could be food safety certified, they could be able to sell their produce and distribute to local schools and markets in their communities. And the fundamental law that motivates us to integrate ancient and modern technology can support our Navajo lifeways and our culture to adapt to the complexities of our changing world. And as Roberto said, it's climate change, water drought, almost a dismantling of our traditional food system. The second policy is looking at setting up those local food policy councils. Delegate Walker shared with us a document on a food policy council initiative that was presented in a former administration. However, in our meetings with chapters and community members, they said we need to have local councils so that we can address local issues. And so I think that will enhance our and promote our system. The third is looking at farm to school. And this is where we can have the chance to work with our school programs and teach food knowledge. And then also having our farmers and ranchers provide local produce and traditional foods to the school meals. And that would give a ready-made federal lunch money program and other institutions like Head Start, senior centers. And so there are funds out there available for our farmer and ranchers. And schools can do school gardens. They can also learn our Navajo culture better, our language. And other tribes are doing this with their farm to school initiatives. The fourth policy is more like an amendment, and we can look at the water issues and maybe suggest how we can do more sustainable access to safe water for our producers. And so this would, of course, entertain our natural law. So anyway, we are concerned, of course, with that water. And the land issue, we are very concerned that currently there appears to be land disputes, and the grazing permit system seems not to be working. It's we are understanding that many of these grazing permits are in the hundreds locked in our tribal court system. And so we've been working with the University of Arkansas, and they are willing to bring in a federal process called the American Research Management Act out of the US Department of Interior that has been helping tribes to unlock land disputes and grazing permit processes. And so we'd like to entertain maybe doing this because our young farmers are voicing concerns that they can't access lands to farm and produce good food for our people. So we want to maybe present some ideas on resolving some of the land issues. One good example again here, just as a demonstration, if we did the food policy, we could work with our policymakers, help them do a uniform reservation-wide certification system, and look even at our traditional ways of growing and harvesting our local and traditional foods to our communities, to our stores, farmer markets, our schools, and so on. And we won't have to be fighting jurisdictional issues that are currently happening. And again, we're looking at policy language from both the Navajo Nation codes, our chapter resolution issues that were brought up, the University of Arkansas's Model Tribal Food and Agriculture Project that has a number of suggested policy languages for all areas of food and agriculture production. We have also attached and provided to Mr. Tahi some other research studies, listings of bibliographies, and synopsis of some real important reports that reflect why we should look at some new and amended policies. These are some specific titles that we're looking at with the Navajo Nation Code, and then also looking at the University of Arkansas's Model Tribal Food and Agriculture Code projects. And a couple just to mention is doing the cultural traditional food productions and sales. They are offering a cottage food program code that our traditional farmers could use in our traditional food production and marketing. Then also, like I mentioned, the Grazing and Farming Permit Program, looking at using the American Resource Management Act. And so these are maybe some
presenters.
Research. So
Presenters, can you wrap up here?
Okay, and so anyway, we thank the council and members of this committee for listening to our presentation. Here's our contact information. And we did provide a sample resolution that we have been working with the chapters on supporting our policies. So thank you, committee members, and we are open for any kind of questions or comments.
Go ahead, presenters, Shema, Mr. Gay, Mr. Nut Lewis, Linda, and Mr. Brown, the committee members, we need to establish a motion to accept the report. Committee members, is there a motion?
Freeland.
Okay, Honorable Mark Freeland, thank you. Is there a second?
Second. Daniel.
Honorable Daniels, thank you. Today, questions, comments for the presenters? Nanda.
Vice Chair Che.
Yes.
I have a comment, just a comment.
Okay, you have the floor.
Chairman, the RDC members and staff, other presenters on Sanigi, good morning. And I just wanted to thank you for the presentation. Very interesting. I'd like to learn more about it. Although I would like to see if you can present to my 8 chapters as well. And if I could get the contact information, maybe from you or maybe Mr. Tahi, he has the contact information, but really want our chapters to hear the presentation as well and give them a grasp and understanding. Maybe even the agency council, we can also have that. But the chapters and even as far as the chapter meeting and having the community members hear the presentation as well. But maybe start with the 8 chapters that I represent out of Eastern. So Eddie Santa, Chairman, Vice Chair, all presenters and staff. Good morning and thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Freeland, for your comments. Any other comments or questions from the committee?
Mr. Vice Chair, Che, Daniel.
Yes. Honorable Daniels, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you, Thank you for the presentation, Resources and Development Committee, what Delegate Freeland, I would like to request for that as well, for the 4 chapters that I represent, yeah, every quarter we have this the North Regional Chapters meeting. North is North of An, Ojeto, Shanto, and Flapiken. Yeah, it listening to your presentation, and looking at the PowerPoint presentation. Just like you indicated, practitioners. We all know that we've been in this drought stage for decades. I don't know how many years, and just recently we had some rain, but just certain areas but in other areas like for Ojeto, we haven't get that much rain yet. I think so with that, I know that years back, people, they used to grow corn, squash, watermelon, cantaloupes, even in a lot of these canyons, grapes, they get the spinach, the wild spinach. But it's the drought, Ecuador, even the water shortage. So these natural springs, how water used to run back in the olden days, but nowadays natural springs and on the fake. So even our medicine, yeah, they do. When you don't have rain, they move around. That's all. Because they they migrate to other areas. So then he does there. She had it as they have no cut. When he and Dash, not I don't cut the snake. Don't get then that what less. Hot echo. So it or you go back to what he kalno go te ko do so ko do na gay them maybe moving forward in the future he that ko I see ko them maybe have a big meeting ko maybe a summit a day ya the sheep on that ko oh year go ba do see ki hello that did I don't know net that na hanne do na here or oh you bet that go there what did na gay ba what has been presented to date to RDC. So what and a great all the committees with that what did I don't know here could RDC could on a great Kaya. Baka had lonely don na Swabi had lonely don and the range that be the had lonely to yeg on half and the Haron the Quado economic development, community development, a Quado a Hashin so a Baba Yes, Kodo, Kadonana Kodona Gata, talking about farming, Kodona Gainana, get the Ye, Kodona Gatam, or Ecuadona Gatam. Every year, the people they go to Shiprock, Kodona Gatam, Northern Navajo Fair at Nico, Kodona Gatam, Western Agency, at Adandak, Kodo, Nagana, Donana, Kodona Gainan, Set. No, go better, but what jiggy yan, not da, na yiz, but that eggy the hador, the Satnai dish, Nathan, don't know, I don't da, Killer. I don't know, at all, the Satish link, not da, the door na gaita, na yiz that hobby or gives on a gaita, or at that the things that know the iron da state upon a gaita, Northern Navajo Fair, the shipwreck. So if it's another whole people they look forward to that fair, Kadona Day Northern Fair, Kadona Day Nan Segi Yan in Yehota Sadaka. So what Ecuador Adonana Kadona Day farming Kado Kado Hashin so it's not a beso maybe to Aja Nagay Legi Stokado a Kodo Yugo Ibahato economic development that Egi. Nan Kodo had hand shot about that at Higi Kodo better dead what did so oh you go Ibahat or Higi Halon there what did I don't know Kodo the way na Haraj the Kodo the way Kodo the practitioners I Hashin for a if you so ya had the Kodo so what that in a way the way I came the hand so for that you show for that you show what is in a way Yan Lenigina Nada since called Adol Lebanese and Deco Adol Len Hagata Babandate or later the whale she's got this tree to eat a seed link for a co other queen she not as not earlier even the Snakado the co that not lost what was lost on the Yagi 8 or so you best get a dead what did that and the radar. And set on close I hit a dead go either Shanani in Shekadona again and close. What they conagate. So it is oh you go back to the long day what did. So did all support on the ego or not the nickel what did what has been presented to us today. But there's more to this what did. Oh you go nana go Bahano what did. Oh, you better dead, you got or did. So it is ya could all about this. They could order for Sheffield ya could like to request this group put on his represent I get to present to the 4 chapters that I represent could on the North region chapters and the Kodona Gatam Kodona Gate this year before December sometimes. Maybe we can do a summit that is made over here at Twin Arrows. So what I invite other presenters at that time. What people on that so I didn't sort of have speed on the Mr. Vice Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Daniels. So Honorable Freeland for your comments. Committee members, any other additional comments or questions with the presenters? Okay, Johnny, let's give time to the presenters to respond. Jay, the two committee members have a request to yourself, your organization on presentations for their regions. Although suggest it was possibly a summit, food policy summit, reflecting the information presented to the committee today. So you want to respond to that, Ms. Begay?
Yes, and thank you for your comments, Delegate Freeland and also Delegate Daniels. This past few months, we did work with the Division of Community Development, and they did put a notice in their newsletters and our flyer that we were going to conduct 5 Navajo policy webinars. And so we conducted those webinars in April, and we had maybe about, I don't know, maybe 20 chapter people participate in these virtual webinars. And then we did a food summit at in Albuquerque, and we didn't get a very large audience. So we do have curriculum and training materials and handouts that we can provide to Delegate Freeland and Delegate Daniels chapters. We do have the capability of doing more training at the chapter levels again. So we're willing to do that, and we can organize a food summit. And like you said, I talked to President Nez, and I told him that there were some key divisions that need to be involved in helping us with these policies, like, of course, economic development division, natural resources with the water and the land and agriculture issues, also community development for the Food Council policy. And so there were 5 divisions that I wrote to President Nez that, you know, we need to meet with them on our proposed policies. So yes, you're all right that, you know, we need to do a lot of education out there in our communities. So thank you for your comments.
Thank you, Ms. Begay and your associates for the presentation today. Any other questions, comments from the committee? Then we can vote to accept the report. So at this time, I'm going to call for the vote. Honorable Freeland, how do you vote? I vote green. Vote of green. Okay. Thank you. Honorable Key Allen Begay, how do you vote? Key Allen Begay, how do you vote? Okay, moving on. Honorable Herman Daniels, how do you vote?
I vote green.
Okay, a vote of green. Thank you. Honorable Wilson Stewart, how do you vote?
Green.
Wilson Stewart, green.
Green,
Okay,
Chair.
thank you. Okay, thank you, Shiga. Chairman Nez is excused from this meeting. I'll back up the line. T. Allen Begay, how do you vote? No, if he's vote by texting. So we have a vote of 4 in favor, none opposing. The motion carries. Vice Chair not voting. Thank you for the report. Moving on to the after reports, old business. There are none. New business. So this time I am going to ask Honorable Mark Freeland to take over the chair to provide assistance to myself and the committee. I have a group of leaders with me right now. I'm going to spend a few minutes with them. I will be on the call, and I will either voice vote or text them my vote. Honorable Freeland.
Agustin, thank you very much, Vice Chair. RDC members of Senigi, go ahead and we'll start with the first legislation. Mr. Tahi, if you can read that legislation into the record, please.
Pro Tem Chair, you have legislation summary tracking sheet 0115-22. I'm looking to see if Delegate Elmer Begay, he is on the call. So I will proceed. You have legislation summary sheet tracking number 0115-22, date July 15th, 2022. Title of the resolution relating to the Resource and Development and Budget and Finance Committees approving a change in CAP-35-18 for the Indian Wells chapter by moving funds from the Senior Center facility repairs in the amount of $265,000 from funding year 1 to 3. Purpose: this resolution, if approved, will move CAP-35-18 from funding for the Indian Wells chapter Senior Center facility repairs from funding year 1 through 3. Budget and Finance Committee has final authority over this legislation, which will be read into the record in its entirety. The primary sponsor of this legislation is Honorable Elmer P. Begay. Tracking number 0115-22. An act relating to the Resource and Development and Budget and Finance Committee approving a change to CAP 35-18 for the Indian Wells chapter by moving funds from the Senior Center facility repairs in the amount of $256,000 from funding year 1 through year 3. And Section 1 outlines authority, and Section 2 is the findings, which includes Exhibit 1 and Exhibit 2 and Exhibit 3. Section 3 is the approval, which references Exhibit 3. Section 4 is the effective date, and Section 5 is the savings clause. Attaches Exhibit 1, which is the CISA Fund Power Chapter Line Capital Projects for Expenditure, which was Exhibit D. Then you have attaches Exhibit 2, the Indian Wells of Navajo Nation's Resolution for Indian Wells Chapter, Resolution Number IWC-22-18. You have Exhibit 3, which is the Capital Project Management Department, the CISA Sun Project Amendment Certification for CAP-35-18. Then you have the first report, the Navajo Nation Legislative Branch Internet Public Review Summary for legislation number 0115-22. Sponsors Honorable Elmer P. Begay. This legislation was posted on July 17th, 2022 at 7 a.m. The 5-day comment period ended July 22nd, 2022. There was no comment supporting this legislation. There was no comments opposing this legislation, and there was no comments or recommendation on this legislation. Pro Tem Chair, that is legislation number 0115-22 read into the record. Back to you.
Thank you, committee members. Let's go ahead and establish a motion in a second before we go to comments or questions. Motion. Second.
Motion, Daniels.
Honorable Daniels with the main motion. Second. Anyone want a second, Shanta?
Pro Tem Chair, Delegate Thomas Walker texted it, and he will be the second.
Thank you. Okay, that's the second. With that, committee members, are there any comments and questions related to this legislation? Honorable Elmer Begay, are you on the line tonight? Honorable Elmer Begay?
Yeah, I'm on the line.
Good morning. Sanaa, good morning. Thank you for joining us. We are on your legislation. We have a motion and a second established for the CAP for Indian Wells chapter. I'm going to go back to the committee members. Are there any comments or questions related to this legislation, Sata? If there's none, I'm going to go ahead and call for the question then. Sata. Honorable Vice Chair Thomas Walker, how do you vote, Shache? Do you believe he might text in his vote? Honorable Herman Daniels Jr.?
Green.
Green. Honorable Wilson Stewart Jr.?
Green.
Thank you, brother. Honorable Key Allen Begay Jr.? Honorable Key Allen Begay Jr.? Honorable Chairman Nez, he's on the Budget and Finance Committee, right? Mr. Tahi?
Pro Tem Chair, yes. Chairman Nez is on Budget and Finance Committee. Vice Chair Walker texted his vote green.
With a vote of 3 in favor, 0 opposed, and interim chair or pro tem chair not voting, legislation does pass. Congratulations, Shanta. Honorable Amr Begay and Indian Wells chapter. You all take care, okay? Thank you.
Oh, yeah, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Tahi, the next legislation.
Pro Tem Chair, members of RDC, you have legislation summary sheet for tracking number 0149-22, date July 14th, 2022. Title of the resolution and action relating to the Resource and Development, Health, Education, Human Services, Law and Order, and the Navigate committees opposing states' decriminalization of the use of peyote. Purpose. This resolution of approval will be the Navajo Nation's firm position in opposing any state within the United States decriminalizing the use of peyote and urging all states to limit the non-criminal use of peyote for religious, ceremonial, and culture purpose only, as it is stated in the American Indian Religious Freedom Act amendments of 1994, 42 USC section 1996A, PL 103-334. Pro Tem Chair, members of RDC, Navigate Committee has final authority over this legislation, which we read into the record in its entirety. The primary sponsor of this legislation is Honorable Eugenia Charles Newton, tracking number 0149-22, an action relating to the Resource and Development, Health, Education, Human Services, Law and Order, and the Navigate committees opposing state decriminalization of the use of peyote. In the body of the legislation, in the whereas, it does reference in an Exhibit A, and therefore, now that it will be resolved, attaches Exhibit A, which is the Azape of the Nation resolution respectfully approving and recommending to the Navajo Nation Council to oppose the national peyote decriminalization. Then you have the first report of the Navajo Nation Legislative Branch Internet Public Review Summary for legislation number 0149-22. Sponsor is Honorable Eugenia Charles Newton. This legislation was posted on August 4th, 2022 at 11:05 p.m. The 5-day comment period ended on August 9th, 2022. You have 25 members of the Navajo Nation supporting this legislation. You have 0 comments opposing this legislation, and you have 1 comment recommendation on this legislation. The 25 individuals supporting this legislation, the first one is Ronald Benally, the second one is Earl Morris Jr., the third one is ABNDA District 17, the fourth one is David S. Clark, the fifth one is Richard Monmore, the sixth one is Albert Johnson, the seventh one is Lula Moore, 8th is ABNDA District 3. 9th is ABNDA District 5. Number 10 is Brooke Clark. Number 11, Amber Begay. Number 12, Carlos Clark. Number 13, Tamara Talamontupatui. Number 14 is Darlene Clark. Number 15 is Dudley Clark. Number 17 is Geraldine Clark. Number 17 is Sharon Clark Begay. Number 18 is Byron Clark. Number 19 is Austin Guerrero. Number 17 is Camaria Clark Robinsons. Number 21 is Darren Kling. Number 22 is David Kling. Number 23 is Maxine Oliver. Number 24 is Tristan Sosi. Number 25 is Herschel Walker Clark. For the comments and recommendation, it's Lorenzo Bedoni. Pro Tem Chair, members of RDC, that is legislation tracking number 0149-22 read into the record. Back to you, Pro Tem Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Tahi. RDC members of Lenigi. Shadeji, are you on the line? Honorable Eugenia Charles Noon. Honorable Charles Noon, are you on the line?
Pro Tem Chair.
I'm here. I was trying to unmute myself. I am here. Can you hear me?
Thank you for joining us. Yeah, we can hear you. Thank you for joining us. We do have your legislation on the RDC agenda at this time. We do have the sponsor on the line. And can we go ahead and establish a motion and a second? Committee members? Do I hear a motion?
Motion, Stuart.
Honorable Stewart, thank you. Tiliaja, thank you for that. Second, Yisha, second motion. Second motion going twice.
Pro Tem Chair, I second.
Okay, thank you, Che. Honorable Thomas Walker Jr. was the second. Okay, Shanta, do you have any comments or questions related to this legislation? Comments or questions, committee members?
Pro Tem Chair?
Yes. You do have a question, Che?
Okay, so Shanta, Chair, Pro Tem Chair, the committee members, sponsor of the legislation, delegate Charles Newton.
Hey, I'm sorry. Before we get to your question, let me go ahead and have the sponsor present the legislation first, okay?
Okay.
And our agent as well, since you do have questions and comments. So, Deja, let me go ahead and turn the floor over to you for your presentation. You do have 20 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate Freeland, and also RDC members. Good morning. I first want to begin by stating that this legislation is a position on behalf of the Navajo Nation. The purpose of this legislation is there is currently what's being called a psychedelic movement that is happening across the United States. Some states are they are decriminalizing peyote. And I know that a lot of people get confused with that term decriminalizing. And what that basically means is right now, the peyote is protected. It is considered to be protected under the Indian Freedom Religious Act, as well as other public laws and statutes within the United States. The peyote is associated to the religion of Native American Church. On Navajo, we call that Azepenagaha. There was a change that happened a few years ago from Native American Church, the title to Azepenagaha. For many of our Navajo people, the peyote is considered to be a sacred sacrament that is used only during religious ceremonies, bona fide religious ceremonies. It is recognized as being protected under the United States government. So for many years, the peyote has been protected, and it has been considered to be I guess you were not able to ingest, nor were you able to carry unless you had a permit. Because of this psychedelic movement that's happening, a lot of states are pushing to decriminalize peyote, meaning it would be something that states could offer as selling to the general public. And in some states, they would even consider that to be a way of producing tax. So, and there are some states that have combined peyote with, I guess, with other drugs that are now legal, like marijuana or hemp. I know that hemp is not considered a drug, but some people consider that to be a drug depending on the way that the tests come back. But right now, these states are pushing to decriminalize, making it allowable for anybody, and to ingest, anybody to possess, anybody to carry, and so it really affects the way that our Navajo people live, and then also the beliefs that they have with the Azep and Nagaha, and also with the Native American church that is also here on the Navajo Nation. What this legislation is doing is it's a very, it's generally worded. Now, the reason we made it generally worded was because we want to be able to send this legislation to any state that is looking to decriminalize peyote. We want them to know that the largest tribe in the United States, which is the Navajo Nation, opposes that action. We want to continue to keep the peyote as a way of life for our Navajo people, keeping it within the sacred, I guess, the sacredness that we consider it to be. Now, I do say we because I am a member of the Azep Nagaha. And so I think it's really, for me, it is personal, but it's also something that I think requires proper education for a lot of not only our members on the nation, but also our federal, I guess, counterparts who are out there who need some education, as well as states. So right now, the legislation is only doing one thing. It's telling state legislators and also the federal government that this way of life, the peyote way of life, is sacred among the Navajo people, and that the use of peyote, the selling of peyote, the carrying of peyote should continue to be a criminal matter if you are not part of the Native American church, or if you're not part of here on the Navajo Nation, Azep and Nagaha. Now, I know that there was some recommendations that were sent to us by a task force that was created by the Azep and Nagaha. After the recommendations were sent in, we did have Dana as well as Chatabeta, who were the attorneys who worked on this legislation, review the recommendations. And the recommendations were that if we continue with the recommendations that were sent to us by the peyote task force, that would only involve changes to Title 17, and those changes would only affect the jurisdiction within the Navajo Nation, and it wouldn't be something that we could send out to the states or to the federal government. For that reason, we did reconvene. We had a meeting, and the purpose of this legislation was what was taken into mind when the legislation was being written and developed. Again, the purpose of this legislation is, once the Navajo Nation makes a firm stance that we do not believe that peyote should be decriminalized, we are planning to send this legislation, letting other states know that the Navajo Nation does support the peyote way of life, but also is against or opposes any decriminalization that's going to happen or that they are thinking about doing. The other thing I do want to point out is there has been a lot of discussion about the peyote and how now it's getting very difficult to get peyote. It used to be that you could go into Texas and you could, you could go in and into the farms and you could pick your own peyote and bring that back here to the Navajo Nation, prepare it and use it in ceremonies. However, that has changed because we are running into, I guess there is a threat that's happening, and that threat is we are having farmers who are taking the land there in Texas and Mexico, and they're using it for land development, or they're using it for ranching, agriculture, poaching, using that land for different things. And as a result of that, peyote is not as well grown as it used to be. Even today, when you do go into Texas, what is required is that you do carry a permit that is that authorizes you to go down into Texas to pick up this peyote and bring it back here to the Navajo Nation. And here in the Navajo Nation, we do have laws in place that do protect people who do eat peyote for bona fide purposes, such as Zebenagaha or Native American Church. So again, the purpose of this legislation is to let other states and the federal government know that anybody who does wishes to decriminalize peyote, that we are the Navajo Nation, we are taking a stand, and we are saying that this is a way of life for many of our Navajo people, and that we oppose that decriminalization, that we want it to continue to be protected under the federal laws and the state laws that are currently in place, and that it only be allowed for bona fide purposes. So I hope that I was able to explain the purpose of this legislation and the stand that we are taking today if this legislation does get approved by RDC, as well as the other committees that it will be coming before. And I'm hoping that we have enough votes to be able to, to make that stand on behalf of the Navajo people, stating that the Navajo Nation does oppose any decriminalization of peyote. So with that, Shna, Delegate Freeland, I do stand for questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that presentation. Very informative, and definitely appreciate you presenting this legislation as well as sponsoring it too. The very important legislation. Honorable Chairman, Vice Chair Walker, Che, you did have comments or questions. I'll start with you, Che.
Yes, Chairman Pro Tem Che, thank you for helping the committee out, and myself and Chairman Nez. I have a question for Mariana Khan, our legislative counsel. If she's on the call here with us, question would go to her. I did send some language for an amendment to this legislation. If that is ready, then certainly that can be read into the record, and then committee can consider that amendment. Let me start with that. Chief, our legislative counsel, proposed amendment, Pro Tem.
Vice Chair Che. Ms. Khan, are you on the line?
Yes, Mr. Delegate Freeland, I am on the line, and I have been reviewing the proposed amendments, and I realize that some of the preferred language that was being given, I needed to research the federal statute that it is referring to make sure the language in this federal statute is being used in the same manner as the amended language that's being provided. And unfortunately, it takes a little more time than I have right now, and I would request the time to research that act I'm just being perhaps too cautious, but in my mind, I do need to pull up the act and look at the language in the federal act that is being discussed in this legislation, or is the subject of this legislation. Members of the Resources and Development Committee, I am sorry I did not, I don't have enough time right now. I'll tell you, I do not feel comfortable without having researched the federal act that we are referring to in this legislation. And everything may be totally in order, but I just do need to look at the language and pull up the federal act that we are referring to make sure the amendment language and the act conform together. Or if they don't, I will, that needs to be highlighted and other language needs to be inserted. Mr. Pro Tem Chair, members of the Resources and Development Committee, I know it's very important legislation that is before you, but I do request the additional time to do the research I feel is needed on these particular proposed amendment language paragraphs. Mr. Pro Tem Chair, thank you for listening to my explanation.
Ms. Khan, thank you for that update and informing the committee of that. Honorable Walker, it sounds like the amendment needs additional time. We'll need additional consideration and research according to Legislative Council. So would you like to maybe wait on the amendment? Okay.
Chairman Pro Tem, yeah. Again, sponsor though, this is Honorable Charles Newton, Khan, or Legislative Council. Thank you for the response. The amendment can wait because the next standing committee is pushing 2-3 more standing committees. So I think the opportune time will arise, and that's when we can have leaders consider making an amendment. To date, the response from Legislative Council that is sufficient enough to say, okay, we can wait. Although just for the record, the Azet Ben Navajo organization, nationwide, so most chapters have such chapter affiliations. So that organization, they have a task force specifically assigned to work on developing, these position statements. So a recommendations coming from them. I think the legislation and the comments that so far have come in to our legislative services, the comments. So that those are an example of the comments coming from the task force. Although the recommended amendment 808 comes from the task force. Constituents. So I'm going to give it back to you, Honorable Freeland, Pro Tem Chair, so I can wait on the amendment. Today, legislation called Resource Development Committee. The outside society is taking an interest in this area of belief and religion, other use of ceremonies and that. Position statements. Chair Pro Tem, thank you.
Vice Chair, Honorable Thomas Walker Jr. Thank you for that, as well as indicating that you will be waiting on the amendment to allow Ms. Khan additional time and research for the amendment, proposed amendment. Yeah. So Ms. Khan, you are granted additional time and research time. So maybe you'll be in communication with Honorable Walker on that amendment, proposed amendment, Ms. Khan. Thank you very much for that. Colleagues, RDC members, Mosenegi, are there any additional comments or questions related to this legislation? Comments or questions? Chantal? Okay, if there's no additional comments or questions on the third call, go ahead and call for the questions or call for the vote at this time then. RDC members, let me check my text messages real quick. Okay, with that, I want to go ahead and call for the vote, questions. Honorable Che Thomas Walker, how do you vote?
Pro Tem Chair, I vote green.
Thank you, Che. Honorable Herman Daniels Jr., how do you vote? Honorable Herman Daniels Jr. Honorable Key Allen Begay Texan has voted as green. Honorable Wilson Stewart Jr.
Green.
How do you vote? Green?
Oh.
Come back up. And of course, Honorable Ricky Nez is at the Budget and Finance Committee meeting right now, so he is excused. Herman Nez. Honorable Herman Daniels Jr. Shana, how do you vote?
I vote green. I was muted.
Kushi, Akela Shana. With that, committee members and Stasia, we do have a vote of 4 in favor, 0 opposed, and Pro Tem Chair not voting. The legislation, of course, does move on to the next standing committee. Thank you very much, as usual, for this very important legislation. And we do have RDC support, and I'll be voting green on that too. So thank you.
Thank you, Shana, Delegate Freeland.
So have a good day.
Thank you.
Your presenters or your sponsors. Thank you. Mr. Tahi, let's go ahead and move on down to the next legislation, please.
Pro Tem Chair, there's only 2 legislation to consider. The next action item under new business C is approving an in-person Resource and Development Committee regular meeting at Cameron Chapter in Cameron, Arizona for Wednesday, August 24th, 2022 at 9 a.m., followed by a site tour of the vendors of the Cameron Little Colorado River to discuss their concerns and issues as it relates to the Navajo Nation Parks and Recreation.
Akushi, thank you, Mr. Tahi, for that. RDC members on Senegi, we do have a proposed site visit to Cameron Chapter. That's Honorable Che Walker's area, right? Cameron Chapter?
Yes. Oh,
okay. Che, thank you. As long as there's going to be stew and fry bread, I think you'll get us all there. Che. RDC members, let's go ahead and establish a motion and a second then. And then we'll go to comments or questions.
Pro Tem Chair, I second. I mean, a motion. Sorry.
Motion made by Honorable Thomas Walker Jr. Second, Igisha.
Stewart.
Honorable Stewart. Hagoshina, Mr. Tahi, what was that date again?
Pro Tem Chair, that date is Wednesday, August 24th, 2022.
Okay, will that coincide with a RDC meeting there? And then afterwards go on the site visit?
For Pro Tem Chair, that is correct.
Okay, thank you. With that, committee members, are there any comments or questions? We do have a motion and a second established. Comments or questions, Natai? If there's none, I'll go ahead and call for the question then. Honorable Che Thomas Walker Jr., how do you vote?
Pro Tem Chair, I vote green.
Okay. Honorable Herman Daniels, how do you vote?
Green.
Thank you, Shana. Honorable Wilson Stewart Jr., how do you vote, Silla?
Green.
All right. Honorable Shana, Honorable T. Allen Begay Jr., how do you vote, Shana? Green. He did text in his vote for green. Okay. Chairman Nez, he's on the almost the RDC on the Budget and Finance Committee meeting. So with that, we do have a vote of 4 in favor, 0 opposed. Pro Tem Chair not voting. We'll see everyone August 24th in Cameron. Okay. Let the chapter know we'll be there. Okay. Moving on down. Next item on the agenda, Mr. Tahi.
Pro Tem Chair, next item on the agenda is D, approving an in-person leadership meeting and executive session with the Navajo Nation Water Rights Commission, Department of Justice Water Rights Unit, and Navajo Nation Water Management Branch to receive an update and provide directions to the water rights proposals for Friday, August 19th, 2022 at 9 a.m. in St. Michael's, Arizona at the Navajo Nation Land Department. Back to you, Pro Tem Chair.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Tahi. Shantai, the proposed date is August 19th at 9 a.m. in St. Michael's, Arizona at the Land Department. Let me go ahead and ask for a motion and a second to be established.
Motion, Daniel.
Chair, I second.
Daniel, Honorable Daniels makes the main motion, seconded by Honorable Walker. Any comments or questions related to this proposed executive session meeting with DOJ and Water Rights Commission? Comments or questions? If there's no comments or questions of the third call, I want to go ahead and call for the question then. Honorable Che, Thomas Walker Jr., how do you vote, Che?
I vote green.
Thank you. Green. Honorable Herman Daniels Jr., how do you vote?
Green.
Thank you. Honorable Kealan McGay Jr., Shana, how do you vote? Honorable Kealan McGay Jr., he might be texting in his vote. Honorable Wilson Stewart Jr., Tilla, how do you vote?
Green.
Okay, green. Honorable Chairman Nez, Ricky Nez is on the Budget and Finance Committee meeting, presenting the RDC budget, oversight budget, as well as, let me go back to Honorable Kealan McGay Jr. Honorable Kealan McGay Jr. going twice. Honorable Kealan McGay Jr. going 3 times. With that, we do have a vote of 3 in favor, 0 opposed, 0 opposed. Pro Tem Chair not voting. We do have that set forth in the meeting. Mr. Tahi, will that also be a Zoom option that day?
Pro Tem Chair, yes, it will also be offered by Zoom in order for us to stay in compliance with the CDC guidelines and the public health order that the Navajo Nation has set forth as well.
Thank you, Mr. Tahi, hybrid model. Okay, thank you. Kushina, moving on down. Next item on the agenda, Mr. Tahi.
Pro Tem Chair, we're at the close of the meeting, announcements and adjournment.
Kushina, thank you for that. We are at the conclusion of our RDC meeting for today. Shanatai, are there any announcements before I ask for a motion to adjourn in a second?
Pro Tem Chair.
Shanatai. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Ms. Tai.
Pro Tem Chair, Budget and Finance is still receiving the budget sessions for RDC's oversight. They're currently on EPA. That's my announcement, Pro Tem Chair.
Thank you. So do we need to get back on the Budget and Finance Committee call and give Chairman some backup?
Pro Tem Chair, I would recommend that highly.
Okay, thank you. All right, committee members, after this, let's get back on Budget and Finance Committee call. Any additional announcements? Okay, if there's none, I want to go ahead and call for the adjournment then. The adjournment time would be 12:41 p.m. 12:41. I know this morning my Che was an hour behind.
Pro Tem Chair,
Actually, Arizona time. Yes.
you need a motion and a second and the vote.
Yeah, I want to. Yeah, motion. I did call for a motion, Mr. Tahi. A motion to adjourn in a second.
Okay, I want a motion.
So now, Honorable Keelan McGay Jr. Good afternoon, brother. Thank you. Second, Igisha.
I second.
Honorable Thomas Walker Jr. With that, we're going to go ahead and call for the question then. Che, how do you vote, Honorable Thomas Walker Jr. on adjournment?
For Tem Chair, I vote green. Thank you.
Thank you. Green vote. Shana, Honorable Herman Daniels Jr., how do you vote?
Green. I almost said red. I vote green. Yeah.
Thank you. Green chili stew. Yeah, hey, brother. Green chili stew. Agushina, Chiliaja, Honorable Thomas, Honorable Wilson Stewart Jr. Trying to
Green.
get fast here. Thank you, brother. Shana, Honorable Keelan McGay Jr., how do you vote, Shana?
Chairman Keelan was green. Thank you.
Thank you, Shana. With that, committee members, of course, Chairman Nez is on the Budget and Finance Committee call, so he is excused. With that, we do have a vote of 4 in favor, 0 opposed. Pro Tem Chair not voting at 12:43 in the PM. We are adjourned, so Shanata, let's go ahead and get back on Budget and Finance Committee call as well. And thank you all for your participation and attendance today. Definitely appreciate it, and RDC's commitment to our, of course, our policy, our legislation, and our Navajo people. Have a great day, everyone. God bless. Thank you, Mr. Tahi. Thank you, staff, as well. Everyone on the call, thank you.